Okay.
I think we're live now. Hello, everybody. Hello, all you minders out there, all you Owings Art fans. How are you doing tonight, everybody?
Trying to ease them into the week, you know, Steve. It's Monday. No one likes Mondays.
That's right.
Maybe we can cheer them up.
Need a little mini vacay right off the bat here.
That's right.
Well, tonight what we're going to talk about is pencils and pens and all the good stuff that we draw with. And I think the way we're going to approach it is, I think most everybody knows what pens and pencils do, and you know, generally what they are, even on a surface level. I think Marty and I are just going to chat a bit about what we like, what our preferences are, you know, what we've been using, and I'm sure towards the end that will spur on some questions. So be thinking of some questions and keep your questions, if you will, please, pertaining to the subject tonight, which is drawing utensils, pens and pencils. And hope you can hang on to the end. We're going to just talk briefly about Inktober and what that is, if you're not familiar, and just a little bit about the rules and the fun involved in all of that. So we will take it away. So pencils.
Yeah, where to start?
Oh man, I got drawers full of them. How about you?
Yes, same here. Yeah, I mean, I just put out a couple, Steve, but you can take a look on my drafting table. There's just too many to count.
Oh wow, yeah. Look at all that.
I got too much in here. See, this is what I was telling Steve right before the show started. I was like, hey, I can't find these particular pencils I'm looking for. You know, who knows where they are in my laboratory? You know, this crazy art laboratory with stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I you know, let's talk about graphite first of all, the big kind of most general category. You know, for years, and this is probably what every artist has or has used. I have drawers full. I have had drawers full of these wood graphite pencils in various hardness ratings. I kind of, and we'll get to this in a bit, I kind of have moved mostly to mechanical pencils, but this is a Staedtler. I don't know, you know, rating wise, one wood pencil from another, but Marty, you being kind of the review king, maybe you have a better beat on that.
Well, sure. Well, first of all, one question I get a lot about pencils is, what are the letters on the pencils and what do they mean? So, you know, HB and, you know, 2B and 2H. So I try to tell people to think of it as the H is for hardness, you know, and the B is kind of like softness. So the higher you go in the B scale, generally the softer and darker the pencil will be. And the higher you go in the H scale or hardness scale, the harder and lighter the pencil will be. So that's, you know, I get that question a lot, Steve. I don't know about you.
Yeah, absolutely. As a matter of fact, I did a video for patrons a couple weeks ago about that in particular, and just talking about the hardness range and where it goes. And that video was specifically about drawing on watercolor paper and what works with watercolor.
Sure.
And as long as I'm talking about that, you know, the gist of it is usually HB is right in the middle. And most people don't know that's the same as a number 2 pencil.
Yeah.
And if you go to the H side of that, and F I think is the first one, and F just stands for fine. Or no, wait. What does F stand for? All of a sudden, I just got a brain bubble.
Well, you have H's and B's, but F.
F is I think just stands for, you can sharpen it to a finer point. It's one hardness.
I think so.
It's right between H, B, and
so
H.
One of our viewers will tell us if we make a mistake on that. So really, you talked a little bit about pencils and pencil types and what are there some that are better than others? And there are some
Yeah.
pencils that are better than others. And I mean, you can get anything from like the humble #2, the yellow pencil, Dixon Ticonderoga is kind of you can get a very expensive black wing pencil.
Oh, yeah.
Or just pick up a regular old yellow #2. You remember filling in the bubbles when you were a kid
Yep.
on the tests,
Yep.
and they tell you only use the 2B pencil that we give you, and it usually would say, Dixon, or it'd be, one of the American pencil manufacturers.
Yeah.
But you can get all the way to like this is a very expensive pencil. Let me bring that up. This is a Swiss-made graph wood pencil, and but made by Karen Dosh, which is a very they make high quality pencils. And the thing
9B.
is, yeah, this is going to be it's going to leave some marks.
Yeah.
This particular pencil and all of Karen Dosh's pencils and watercolor pencils are really artist grade, Steve. And not to get in the weeds too much, but the wood casing around here is responsibly sourced cedar wood. Apparently, the Swiss sing to the trees while they're growing, and the graphite in these pencils is the finest graphite in the world. And I think there's a few mines, one's in Wales. There's a few graphite mines in Eastern Europe, but they get the finest graphite in the world, and they make these very fine pencils. So
that's great. That's great,
so
Marty. That's exactly the kind of info I was hoping for. Again, because I don't use wood pencils as much anymore, I tend to use these.
Yeah.
Now, these lead holder, these 2mm lead holders.
Yeah.
Or the smaller click kind of mechanical pencils.
Yeah, and we're going to get into those in a minute, but
yep.
I tend to do the same thing, Steve, now. But I like going back to a pencil. This is a Mitsubishi pencil, and some of these pencils are very nice because they are hexagonal or shaped so they don't slide off a tilted work surface.
Oh yeah.
Other pencils will, like this Derwent sketching pencil here, or some of the Generals, they'll be round pencils. And then some of them have different grades and thicknesses in the core of the lead. So you're going to get a different experience.
Oh, yeah.
Those pencils.
Yeah, you can use them expressively on their side or stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly. You could kind of see that the thickness is represented there quite a bit differently. Now, the barrel of the pencil itself is something that is very interesting, because some of them that have the round barrel, they're manufactured obviously differently than the square barrel. But almost all pencils, they don't come like this. They don't insert the lead in there. These are in halves. So there's two halves, and they're glued together. And then when the paint goes on, you don't see the little seam there.
Okay.
And when you sharpen it, you shouldn't see that.
Okay.
So that's how I think most pencils are made nowadays. I suppose there's maybe some different manufacturing techniques, but those are the ones I know about.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. I know. Well, just getting back to the little video that I mentioned that I made for patrons, I was talking about what I draw on watercolor paper with, because at HB, well, first of all, let's go back to the hardness range.
Yes.
HB and down, everything, or down or up, I should say, in hardness has an H after it that stands for hardness. Everything on the B side, the B stands for blackness. Right at the HB, oddly enough, is if you get any softer than that, the graphite's going to travel with your wash.
Yeah.
And it does just a tiny bit with HB. Usually if you get into H and 2H, you're fine. So if you're just looking for a light pencil just to put your drawing down on, and then watercolor over that, you're usually safe with H. I don't even mind myself using an HB.
Yeah,
but,
right.
Yeah. And now some people don't mind, the graphite traveling. I'm not talking about the water-soluble graphite, but
well, that's what I was going to mention too. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Steve.
yeah.
Yeah.
Some people don't mind graphite traveling with their wash a little bit, but if you're looking for pure colors with no gray in it, it'll bother you. But usually H is kind of is sort of your safe point, and HB is kind of iffy. If you're not real dark with your shading and your drawing, you
Right.
can even get by with HB.
Yeah, you can, and you described the hardnesses just right. There's a there's a specialty pencil like, and if you'll notice on this particular pencil, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's a little paintbrush on there. Can you see the little the
Yeah,
little tip
yeah.
paintbrush? That in the Derwent series, that'll generally mean that it's water
Water
soluble. So
soluble.
yeah, so you can get some different effects. This is a light wash, but they have a medium and a dark wash. And most of the pencils today, the graphite washes just come in those three ranges. There isn't like an
Yep,
extra dark or extra light. They just come in light, medium, and dark wash. And what's
sure.
cool about these pencils, apart from getting the wash effects that you might get from ink, but you get them in graphite, they work on almost anything. I mean, they'll work on like the Duralar papers or a nice Bristol, whatever way you can move water. Now,
True.
half the pressure, twice the speed. That's a Blackwing
Oh
pencil
yeah.
right there.
I've read a lot about Black Wings, and aren't they the ones that do the limited edition
Yeah,
sets?
yes, they
I've,
do.
I've never owned one, but just wanted to out of curiosity.
Well, we can talk about it, but the novelty of getting a set of these pencils is you take them out and you smell them like a cigar. You hold them
Yeah,
in your hand. You look down the barrel to make sure everything is straight. They're beautiful pencils, much the way you would handle the Swiss-made Caran d'Ache pencils, which are a thing of beauty in themselves. But yeah, so I mean, and you can spend anywhere from 20 cents or 10 cents on a pencil, or you could buy a dozen for $1, anywhere to a single pencil costing you $10.
wow.
So there's quite a range of prices on pencils. I'm sure there's some boutique pencils that cost more than that, but
Mhm. Hmm.
so pencils, yeah, and I mean, there's pastel pencils, there's charcoal pencils, there's
Mhm.
graphite pencils. So there's the whole range.
Well,
And
touching
then
back on the graphite pencils for a minute, I
yeah,
love using those. I love sketching with those. In fact, I wish I, did more of it, because every time I've done it, it's been just a really enjoyable uh, experience.
that's
I
fun.
don't know if they're all this way, Marty. I have, I think, the same Derwent set that you have,
Yes.
but usually once you apply the wash and dissolve it out, you really can't erase it much. At least I've found. Has that been your experience? It
Yeah,
erases fine until you apply the water.
yes, you're going to get into trouble with some erasing, especially if you're going to use like a pink pearl or something like that. However, there are some pencils that are rated, if you let them dry, Steve, you can do a little erase, not much,
Okay.
but I
Okay.
recommend like a vinyl eraser like a Stedler Mars plastic or something like that.
Yep.
And then don't rub too hard, just very lightly. The thing with the washes is they're washes. You don't want to have to make too many corrections. It'd be like taking an eraser to a watercolor painting.
Sure.
There's
Sure.
just other methods to fix the damage or whatever you want to change. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
I love them
Well,
though, Steve.
yeah. This is one thing that I've done now. As I mentioned, I don't use wood pencils much anymore, but I did buy this set, and I keep it intact. Uh, this is a Faber Castel, and it's
Yeah.
got the whole hardness range. And I wanted one set where I kept everything kind of intact like that, just for the occasion where I start with a particular one and
Yeah.
work my way down through the range.
Yeah.
Because if knowing me, if I throw, and I usually throw all my pencils in a drawer, I'm
Sure.
fishing around for, I'm at 3B, now I need to go to 4B or 5B. Where is
Right.
that sucker?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's just kind of a tip. I keep one set where I try to keep it intact, and I know I can go from like HB or H on down through the range. This range here goes all the way to 6B, no, 8B.
8B. Okay,
Um,
so you're going in the, you're going to be in the darker range with the
yeah,
B.
well, it goes up to 2H.
2H.
You can
So
actually think,
actually,
I think you
you're in the
can,
darker range there.
yeah, it's 2H down to,
Softest.
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
2H down to 8B. And you can get up to 6H. I mean, that's like practically like silver point.
That's right. Yeah, that's going to be pretty hard. You're going to want some good sturdy paper for that, because the pencil lead's going to tend to want to etch rather than sketch,
Yeah,
as I like to
yeah,
say. But there, it's funny you should mention that. You keep that intact because uh, it's hard to organize your pencil. I got some of these, you get these like fishing lure tackle screw,
oh yeah,
whatever this thing is. You can buy these at your big box hardware store. This happens to be a Plano, which, I mean, they're kind of a, or you can pay 3 times the money for an art bin. You don't need that. You
that's
don't
right.
need that, people. Just get this thing for fishing lures and tackle. If you go in any Fleet Farm or Mills, whatever hardware store or fishing tackle store, they're going to have these boxes, and they're just as good, and they're probably made in the same factory.
And that's how you
Don't
keep
tell them.
yours categorized.
Pretty much, but when I'm working fast, Steve, I mean, that's my intent. But when I'm working fast, they all get thrown in there,
Yeah.
and then I'll have to go back and sort them out later. But it gives me something to do. And one of these slots, I keep a lot of vintage pencils in.
Oh
So
yeah.
old pencils, that because they don't make them like that anymore with actual lead, because it's dangerous, right?
Yeah.
Don't let your kids around lead pencils. But yeah, I mean, depending on what effect you want to get, there's a pencil made for that.
Sure. Well, just kind of getting back to the whole hardness range and doing a full tonal drawing. I find them very valuable, and this is kind of getting away from the pencil itself, but just to touch on this, I find it very valuable if I'm really working out the values of a painting, and I could do that in watercolor, but it's kind of hard to beat doing thumbnails and little studies, tonal value studies, and pencil. And so that's kind of where the whole range comes in for me. And those just kind of take the decision-making process away from you when you're trying to actually put the paint down. So just throwing that out as a little tip. I know I'm a watercolor channel and I'm mainly a painter, but that's I don't do a lot of just finished pencil drawings anymore, although I should, because I really enjoy it. But that's one thing I find very valuable for the painting experience also. Just kind of wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, Steve, it's funny you should mention that. I love underdogs, and part of the reason I'm a Detroit Tigers fan. But if you think about it for a minute, the pencil is it's the lowliest form of art. Really, I mean, you can't get much lower than that, but a cave drawing, right?
Yep.
So you got a graphite pencil, which most art snobs will turn their nose up at a finished drawing unless it has some kind of photorealism that just blows people away. And then you've got watercolor, which is kind of next in line. And then you got pastels, and then you got oil paintings, and then acrylics in there. There's a whole range of what art snobs consider true art. But I always love just a really good rendered pencil drawing, and maybe it's because of my architecture background, but seeing somebody use a pencil in the right way and draw something beautiful, it doesn't have to be photorealistic.
Nope.
It's just beautiful to look at.
Well, and I didn't bring one in here. I should have. If you've never looked at and now the name is all of a sudden escaping me, that pencil annual, Strokes of Genius.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Strokes of Genius is an annual, sort of like Splash is for watercolor.
Sure.
Strokes of Genius, I mean, you just, and you can get those pretty used on Amazon, some of the earlier ones. Just pick up one of those and leaf through it, and it's breathtaking. And some of that stuff is just pencil. Just pencil. There's some colored pencil and some other stuff, but That's all you need sometimes. It's all you need.
What men and women can do with the humble #2 pencil is amazing. The old yellow #2, I
Yep.
mean, you can get so many variations of shade by, how hard you press and how lightly you use your stroke. I mean, some people have just mastered that, and I think it could take like half a lifetime to get really good,
Yeah.
to be really great pencil artists. And I just think it deserves more respect than it gets really in the art community.
Yeah. This is kind of a side, but to that point, you know what my first ever commission was?
Yeah, what was it?
It was a Ghost Rider, the comic character.
Of course, yeah, I know him well. Yeah, yeah.
A guy in 7th grade. He knew I could draw, and he brought in his Ghost Rider comic book. He said, "Can you draw me that, on a drawing?"
Yeah.
And I took his comic book home and came back the next day with a pencil drawing of Ghost Rider, all done with a #2, probably a Ticonderoga school pencil.
Yeah. You never kept it? You gave it to him?
I didn't.
Yeah.
I should have.
It's funny you should mention that, because when you're an artist in grade school and junior high, kids are always asking you to draw stuff. Mine was the Hulk. I would draw the Hulk for kids, or whatever they wanted to. But I would trade my drawings for like milk tickets. I don't know if you remember milk tickets.
Yeah,
You used to get milk tickets. I would trade drawings for milk tickets, or lunch tickets, or whatever.
Sure.
Kind of by the end of the school year, I'd accumulated a lot of tickets. Because you could just whip out a drawing in a couple hours, and people like it, and it gave me good practice. But anyway, good story. And it's weird how similar, artists, experiences are sometimes.
Right. Well, let's talk about mechanical pencils for a bit.
Yeah, let's.
I kind of got a problem. I kind of have a problem in that regard.
How so?
I'm addicted.
You got too many?
Let me see if I can get my camera down here on these things.
The correct answer is there's never too many, right?
And there's no reason, because they all work the same.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe let me see what you got there.
Yeah.
You got a nice collection.
Well, and I just keep seeing more and more that I love and want to try. These right here, these Koh-i-Noors.
Yes.
Hopefully you can see these okay. But these Koh-i-Noors, these red Koh-i-Noors, were my first.
Those are beautiful.
I would say they're my first mechanical art pencils. I'd had like school mechanical art pencil types before, but I've always loved them. Those are great to have the sort of knurled textured holders. And then I just
Look what I
started
got,
branching
Steve.
out. Yeah, that exactly.
Yeah, these are beautiful.
And then I picked up on these, and I really love these. These are Pentel. These 3 graph gears. These two are graph gear 500s. The one is a 0.5 and one is a 0.7, and then this is a graph gear 1000. That's probably one of my favorite. That's probably one of my favorite plein air pencils, because it retracts. The point, you just click this up here.
Oh, sure.
It retracts that point. So anyway, it's and then these other ones are just varieties that I've tried. Probably the most unique is let's see. Well, this one's nice. This is just a really nice quality pencil. This is a Rotring, and I'm probably not able to focus on this, but
no, you can see it come back a little bit. No, move your hand away, and then it'll focus in.
How's this?
You're getting there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway.
The camera steady. Yeah. It's the 500, right?
Yeah, that's the 500.
Yeah. That's a beautiful, beautiful.
It is. It's a gorgeously made pencil. This one right here is Uni Kurutoga. This is the one that rotates
the leads in there.
Yeah,
I know about that one. Yeah.
Rotates the lead as you draw, so it stays sharper.
Ah, sure.
And just a couple others that I thought were interesting. This is probably the newest one that I thought was pretty nice. This is let's see, it's a Pentel, but it's capped. It's the only one I've seen that's capped.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to do this with one hand. Oh well. Anyway,
I like the cap.
nice. It's all aluminum. Yeah.
That's very nice. Yeah.
And it will post up like a fountain pen, and you can give it some nice balance. Anyway, you know, I have an inexplicable kind of obsession with mechanical pencils, as you can see. And then these are the lead holders.
Now I know this feeling. I mean, I experienced the same. I have the same illness as you have, apparently, because I have a ton of these as well. You know, look, I got all these, and then I got. So the thing is, I got some vintage ones that started. They're vintage now, but when I started out my drafting career, they weren't. But that's a Kohinoor. That's a very nice. Feels nice in your hand. It's
very nice.
A little heavier, and
very
then
nice.
I won't talk about the ones you already covered, but I have a lot of the same ones you covered, including a really. This is an old technical pencil lead holder. But let me tell you about what I use all the time, almost every day in my practice. This is the Faber-Castell TK 9400.
Oh, I like that one. I don't have that, but I like that. I want to, you know, now you've done it. Now you've done it.
Steve, this this lead holder is perfectly balanced, engineered so that it feels right at almost any position. It's got kind of a knurled, the plastic bit here, you know, see these ribs? Easy to hold, easy on the hand, and you know, it'll hold whatever, you know, whatever leads you want. And I was just going to show you an example of you can get these replacement leads.
Yeah.
And I find it just a whole lot more economic to have one of these and some of these than it is to have to replace a really good pencil all the time.
Yeah, I'm going to put my camera back. But yeah, sharpening is like a cinch when you use those mechanical pencils. You know, you use one of these, Marty?
I do use one of those, yep. And I have a little smaller one too. I'll show you.
Just like 3 seconds to sharpen your pencil. You know, you just rotate it around.
Easy speasy.
Yeah. And I mean, I use these lead holders or a mechanical pencil for the finer points almost exclusively now.
Yeah, those are nice.
And if it's fine, like this right here is a 0.3 millimeter. If I'm doing really fine detail, but if I want expressive or want to get down into the softer leads, you can't beat the lead holders. You
can't. And here's a little tiny one, Steve. This is do I have that upside down or right side up? I don't know. This is a little Faber-Castell one, and you just see that there's holes here. Then you just put the lead in, just turn it, sharpens it right up. Okay. Yeah, I mean this one I'm kind of not really giving it justice, but I could just, you give it a few turns, all the lead is caught in there, and you get a nice sharp point on your pencil. Now this is a little harder lead. I use an HB because I do light, you know, when I'm doing watercolor work. But you know, my buddy Stuart Lockridge, he likes a little bit of his pencil work to show through.
I do too. I do too on a lot of cases. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks nice, and it just helps add another dimension to the drawing.
Now, if I'm doing, I'll mention this. You see that blue lead in there? That's I do a lot of sketching. If it's not going to be on watercolor, I do a lot of sketching with this. This helps. If you've ever seen illustrators, even animators and cartoonists do this a lot. Yeah, they'll use the blue or the red, and it keeps your paper cleaner, keeps it from getting too dark before you add your final lines. So I keep one of these loaded with that. That's right. I was just going to mention quickly too, if you want to replace the lead, you just pull these up. That little lid flops over, and you just pull a fresh one out. Are those Faber-Castell leads? These are Faber-Castell leads, which are really good. I also found that the Staedtler replacement leads are pretty darn good as well. That's what I have as Staedtler. Okay, yeah, and you can't go wrong because they're made in Germany. Here's the replacement leads for the Staedtler, and they come in this
this tube, kind of a tube when you
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
yeah. So mechanical pencils and lead holders. Lead holders are great. The best one in my mind, apart from this, I mean, Staedtlers and the Koh-i-Noors are great, but the Faber-Castell TK 9400, highly engineered German instrument of mass creation.
Awesome. I'm gonna have to find one of those.
I should send you one because I got like 14 of them somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I know we're not answering questions yet. I just happened to see somebody wonder if these are going to be listed. Yeah, when this is a recording, I'll go back through this video. It may take me a little bit, so be patient, but I'll try to go back through and list all of these supplies. And, you know, that way you can link to them and find them easily.
Sounds good.
When we were talking about pencils, the wood pencils,
Yeah.
we didn't really touch on it, but charcoal pencils, I don't really use them much anymore. I did in school years ago, but
Yeah.
is that something that you use much, or?
I do use them once in a while when I'm doing charcoal drawings.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what I tell you what I'm in love with, Steve, is this pencil right here, and you can tell I've worked this pencil over. This is a Pitt oil pencil.
Huh.
So this is it's like a graphite, but there's some oil and the right mix of clay in here. These pencils right here are outstanding. They're just you just get the right texture. It's like drawing with I don't know, some kind of magical instrument. It's beautiful. This happens to be a medium, but they make them in different sizes, and you can get the same effects you can with sort of a charcoal drawing. They'll
Probably nice and silky black dark, I imagine.
Yes, exactly. And Generals makes a really inexpensive, you know, I'm not a pencil snob, so just say it here, that General, they're the inexpensive brand.
Yeah.
But you know what? You know what? They're made in America.
Okay.
For the most part, they're made in New Jersey, and there's like a pencil plant left in Georgia, your part of the country, that still makes pencils. Dixon Ticonderoga makes them down there, but
you see them all. You see Generals all over the place, and what few I have, I've never had a problem with. So.
No, I haven't not too many problems here. Remember the Humble number 2?
Yeah.
This is actually a pencil that I had many years ago, and I still use it from time to time. Although it's so precious, Steve, I can't bear myself to sharpen this thing. You know?
I hear you.
Yeah, it says America's pencil on it. Steve, why would you sharpen America's pencil?
Hey, you know? I don't know. That just brought something else to mind. Do you know who John Nagy is?
The name's familiar.
John, it's G-N-A-G-Y. If there are any old timers on watching this, they're probably going to know. He was to drawing TV shows what Bill Alexander and Bob Ross were to painting. He had a series back in the 60s on learning how to draw, and then he had all the supplies, you know, that you learn to draw, and he had these step-by-step books that he marketed. And that's one of the first kind of drawing tutorial books I ever drew out of. My mom actually had them and was drawing from them. I still have like 3 or 4 John Nagy pencils from the 60s back there in a drawer. And they're great. They're great. They're graphite, like a deep ebony kind of a graphite. See,
the thing is, Steve, I'm do you ever go like stop in at a garage sale or an estate sale? You ever do any of that?
I have, but not in a long time.
I know. Well, it's like going to an estate sale, and there's like these people going through the guy's tools in his garage, and I feel horrible because that's what people they're gonna go, oh, this pencil, that's not worth anything. Are you kidding me? that pencil, that you could do so much with that pen. That's an instrument of mass creation. You can't just buy that. You're going to negotiate me down from $1 to 50 cents. Come on, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No.
That's great.
So I got to will all this stuff out. And in my last will and testament, I leave to Steve Mitchell my pencil collection because I know Steve Mitchell will be a good steward for the pencils. You'll respect the pencil.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's funny. Yeah, no, that's a good idea though. The estate sales. I haven't been to those in a long time, and I can't say that I've ever done that specifically with art supplies in mind. But hey, why not? You know?
Yeah, one last thing on pencils before we move on in this to get to we're going to get to colored pencils and watercolor pencil.
Yeah.
But there's one thing I want to mention is if you're so used to holding the pencil like you did as a kid, I get in this habit sometimes. I'll hold the pencil this way. One tip for pencil artists to try is to hold your work surface more vertical and try holding the pencil like this.
Yep.
Try drawing like this. You'll experience a whole different dimension of drawing if you just hold it a little bit more like you would a brush. And I'm going a little fast here, but put your work surface at like maybe a 50, 45, 50, 60 degree angle, and then hold your pencil just like this and just sketch with it. It's I'm sure you did that in art school, Steve, but it's easy to forget.
It's a great tip. I touched on that in one of my videos a little bit. By the way, this is another mechanical pencil.
These the pencil holder, yeah,
the big. They call them clutch pencils, I think.
Yes,
it's just like the other ones, only it's a fatter lead. But I like to put the butt, if it's not too long, in my palm.
Yeah,
and then hold it out here when I sketch.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
And what I tell people to do, what?
Steve, can you hold up another pencil next to that just to give people a relative comparison in size?
Yeah.
In terms of the size of the pencil.
Well, here's a standard.
Yeah, it's a big boy.
This is the standard lead holder, and it's about the size of a regular pencil. And here's the clutch pencil. And you can get these too, these colored leads to go in it, which are a lot more like colored pencil leads. They'll go in there too.
Yeah.
But it's the big fat ones. I forget. These are 5.6 millimeter.
Yeah,
so
you can't beat
over double the size of this.
And it adds just a whole nother dimension to your drawings.
Yeah, and you know, I really don't use this much unless I'm doing a big drawing, a big expressive, rough drawing. But it's kind of an interesting thing. But anyway, getting back to grip, that's what I do. I hold it in here, and in the video that I talked about it, I just recommend to people that they hold the pencil any way but the way you write. So if this is how you write, this is how I write. You know, some people, you know, grip it like that. But if this is how you write, now you can tighten up your lines, do your finished cleanup that way. But when you're working out the rough sketch, you know, I hold it like this. Some people do it hand over like this.
Yep.
I'll hold it back a little like this.
Yes.
You know, and work on the surface like this. I've seen some artists put it between their fingers like
a brush.
Yeah, like a brush.
Yeah.
But the reason for that, Marty, is that the ability to draw and perceive proportions and contours is in your brain and in your eye. It's not in your hand. And the problem is you have, when you write, you have muscle memory, and this sort of just helps your brain take over.
Yeah.
And this is the reason people can draw with their mouth or their feet, you know, people who have disabilities.
That's right. No, you're absolutely right. I respect that. And the other thing is, say you do struggle from like hand fatigue, this is the worst way to hold. If you'll notice you're drawing like this for a while and your hand starts to get tired, or, you know, you feel some muscle cramp, that's why you're holding that pencil too darn hard. You just got to loosen up a little, and you'll be, you know, you'll have a much better experience, and you will have more endurance when it comes to drawing.
Very true. Very true.
So,
and I found that the more I loosen up also and draw with a different grip, the more it's almost kind of addicting, because your sketches are just looser and freer feeling, in addition to the fatigue aspect. That's a great point. So. Yeah,
the whole careers have been made out of just doing kind of free,
Yep.
free and loose sketches that way.
Yep.
So.
Well, let's talk about colored pencils. Why don't we?
Oh, all right.
This will be a short one for me. I used to do a lot of colored pencil work, and I don't as much anymore. I will use them as a line and wash tool for watercolor, like the Prismacolor, wax-based ones. And most of the Prismacolors I have are old stock.
That's good.
I haven't bought any of the new crap,
Yes.
Anytime recently that I can remember. I know they've changed. Everybody says they have, and I'm going to let you address that. But mainly, there are whole artists out there that do nothing but work in colored pencil. And what do you do, Marty? What do you like to use? And I think you've got a good bit of experience in that.
Yeah, well, I have dozens of reviews up on the channel covering everything from a Crayola or a Prang pencil, the very lowest end children's pencil, all the way up to the very fine Caran d'Ache luminance type pencil. So I cover the full range, and what I can tell you based on all my experiences with pencils is, one, you get what you pay for, generally speaking, and two, it pays to understand what the pencil is made of.
Mm-hmm.
So just as you have single pigment paints, as a watercolorist, you may pride yourself on understanding the depths of the paint that you're working with, whether or not it's a gum Arabic binder or what type of binder it is. The same thing, and there's a big argument with people about, well, is it wax-based or an oil-based pencil? And largely what it comes down to is most all pencils, colored pencils, are some combination of wax, clay, and oil. And depending on the different mixes or percentages, that will tilt the scale of whether or not it's sort of considered a wax-based pencil or a oil-based pencil. But clay is the substrate. There's a clay. The pencils that I use the most for colored work and drawing tend to be the very fine Faber Castel Polychromos pencils.
Okay.
And I've got pretty much the full range that I need here in my set, which is delicious, both in terms of color and just the way these pencils feel when they hit the paper. It's like painting with love, like drawing with love, Steve. See, you might laugh about that, but when you experience true love, you know what it feels like, right? Feels good. You're warm inside. You're happy. You're excited. That's how it feels to draw with the Polychromos pencil.
I've never used the Polychromos, but I hear that all the time.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time. I think Lisa Clo on Lacry Fine Art, that's her favorite.
Yeah, well, a lot of people love the Faber-Castell because it hits the sweet spot of very high quality and not too expensive. And you can buy those pencils in open stock. So you don't have to buy, crazy sets of these to fill out a nice collection. Matter of fact, you don't need all these reds I use. I tend to use a lot of reds and greens and browns. But look, there's a very inexpensive pencil that Blick makes. And they market it under the Blick brand, but it's really made in a town called Budweiss, same place Budweiser came from originally, or was named after. There's a factory there, a Koh-i-Noor factory. And Koh-i-Noor is a Czech company, and they make a lot of different art materials, but they make some really good colored pencils. Those tend to be on the wax side, but they're good pencils. Every good color. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to ask: are Prismacolors primarily wax-based? I thought that they were.
Prismacolors are primarily wax-based. They're clay. I don't know where they source it now, but they used to source really good quality clay. So you'd have very few breakage issues inside the pencil. Some manufacturers have even gone to, and this isn't true with Prismacolor, but they put a little coating around the core so that the core won't break in shipping. And when you sharpen it, you can see there's a little white like film around the lead. And the pencil manufacturer will come to mind for me in a minute that they do it a lot, but that
Okay.
helps the pencil. Now, let's talk about Prismacolor, because a lot of people use and love Prismacolor.
What happened to them?
Well, in 1996, the company was bought by Rubbermaid Newell. That's a conglomerate of companies that make everything from Walmart, trash bins and plastic items to whatever. Well, during the period shortly after they purchased the company, I believe that they let go a lot of the veteran pencil people at the company, tried to replace them with corporate people, and then they outsourced the manufacturing of the pencils. So you had manufacturing going on primarily in Mexico and China. And what happened to the quality of the pencils is it precipitously dropped. You noticed the drop in quality, breakage, you call this the casing, what used to be sourced with the highest quality California cedar, and then I think they just go and buy the cedar wood wherever they could get it. So it would break and chip, and a lot of people are just turned off by using them. Now, they make a line of pencils, Verithin, they make the Premier, they make the Prismacolor drawing or standard colored pencil. If you can find new old stock, anything made in the 80s or prior, you're golden. But it's getting harder and harder to find those old sets. But those are still some of the world's finest pencils.
Yeah, I haven't experienced a lot of problems with the ones I've had. I have bought just a few pencils in the last 5 years in open stock and haven't noticed any particular problems, but I hear it all the time. They're just not what they used to be. And I tend to just look, when I buy something open stock, I just tend to look at the end of it to make sure it's centered. Of course, you can't tell that. I hear a lot of trouble with breakage and down the barrel of the pencil, broken leads or something. I don't know what.
I mean, you'll be sharpening them, Steve, and the whole core will just fall out.
Ugh,
now, that could have something to do, if it's broken inside, you'll get a chunk out. Now you got to sharpen an inch off the pencil to get back to the core. And some of that could have to do with the quality of the glue that's used inside, the casing to secure the core. But it really just comes down to quality. And it seems like a lot of their quality control people, were let go. Now, I don't want to badmouth Prismacolor too bad, because they still make a few different decent pencils. And Verithins are what they say they are. They're very hard pencil, made for really fine line work, and you can still get good pencil. And to this day, through all of that turmoil that the company's gone through, they still make the very best, most superb white. So you can't find a better white than a Prismacolor white. I challenge somebody to, not the Swiss company, not the German company, whatever they're doing with their white, it's just about perfect.
They're still doing it. Okay.
They haven't messed with that, apparently.
Well, that's good information.
So the white works great. And, a lot of people use the white because they might do a tone paper drawing or whatnot.
If I use it to highlight on watercolor every now and then, if I don't need something as stark as a gel pen or white paint, I'll use a white Prismacolor.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Well, let's not leave some other brands off the list either, because there's a lot of very, very nice pencil brands. You can buy a fancy, pencils where these are made in Holland. These are like, they're like getting a box of cigars, right? This is a Brunzil Sakura pencil, which is a really excellent pencil, and it comes in a really finely made box. It's got little tabs on it. Look, Steve, the pencils are resting comfortably. It's like they're all bunk beds.
You'll never want to sharpen them.
No, you want to keep these perfect. There's very nice, kind of boutique pencils that you can buy. Some of the ones I should mention that are sort of newer on the market. Creative makes some good colored pencils, but there's a whole myriad. These Brunzils are nice. They're made in Holland. I love these pencils. They're pretty, good quality. But those ones you can buy at Blick, and you talk for a minute, Steve, and I'm going to pull up my pencil list because I don't want to
Okay.
leave anything out that I thought was worth mentioning.
Yeah, that's I can't talk real intelligently about colored pencils. Just the full range and scope of my experience has been Prismacolor, but that probably goes back, and I think most of my stock goes back 10 years, I guess.
So you've got the really classic ones.
I guess I've never seen that have a problem. Where I used to use them a lot is they made a great top technique, top detailing technique over airbrush.
Sure.
Now I don't know if you're familiar with the famous movie poster illustrator Drew Struzan.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
This is the technique he used, and he did a lot of airbrush, and then he did a lot of detailing on top of that with colored pencil. Well, you know, in the 90s and on into the early 2000s, everybody was trying that technique and everybody was doing it, and some people still do it. And now it's kind of become, it kind of feels funny to say this, and now it's kind of become a vintage style.
Right.
You know, I don't even think of it as vintage, but that just tells how old I am. But it was a really cool technique, and that's really the last time I got involved in doing a Disney book with 3 other illustrators. And it was a platoon job, and what a platoon job is there was really no individuality to the art in the book. One artist did the background, one artist did the drawing, one artist did the character painting, and another artist came on top of that with the colored pencil details. So it was like a factory assembly line process. But it was a Hercules book. When did Hercules come out anyway?
Hercules? Geez, that's
I don't know. But we worked on that book, and we worked our little patooties off, and the whole thing was airbrushed acrylic with colored pencil top detail. And I was one of the colored pencil top detailists, colorists. So I would get a piece or a spread where the whole thing was painted, the background was painted, and the characters had been drawn and were flat painted, and I had to go in and shade them with colored pencil. I did all that with Prismacolor, but since those days, I really haven't done much with colored pencil other than, like I say, to use them as a kind of line. And I like to do a line drawings with them and then watercolor over that, because you can get a nice, totally waterproof line sketch. It's a great way to do line and wash without ink, you know. So that's you're looking about the sum total of my colored pencil experience.
Well, you've used them, so you know, kind of know what you like. I was going to mention the Marco Raffini, or there's Marco makes a couple of different brands that people seem to really like because they're lower on the price point. The Marco Renoirs, the Spectrum Noir pencils, Utrecht, which is the same as Blick, which is the same as Koh-i-Noor. You kind of have to follow these things down the line. But the one that I was going to talk to you about, the one that had the liner in there, that was that I believe, trying to remember, it was a Stedler, I believe, a Stedler colored pencil. But I'll find the right one. But yeah, I mean, basically all these pencils are decent. We could talk about watercolor pencils in a minute, but one thing that people want to know a lot about when they use colored pencils is, how the heck do I blend those? You know, and some people use baby oil.
Oh, good point. Good point.
They use a whole myriad of different, petroleum jelly even.
I used to just burnish them. That's what I did. I just burnished them.
Well, a lot of people want to know, like, what's the difference between a blender and a burnisher? Because there's a difference. You with a burnisher, you're going to get. Let me see what I got here. Let's show you. There's a burnisher. This happens to be a Derwent burnisher. You can kind of see there.
Yeah.
And this is and then you've got a blender, and this is a blender. Now, they're very similar. Okay, very very similar. But I think that the burnisher and the blender behave a little bit differently,
Okay.
at least in my experience. This, you're not going to have the blender, you're not going to have as much blooming of the, layering. When you layer on the colored pencils, if they're cheap, you're going to tend to see a waxy shine.
Oh.
Like if you've gone too hard.
Yeah.
And a lot of pencil
Yeah.
artists don't want that. It just, that shininess just throws off the eye. You'll see it and you'll go, ooh. So
Sure.
whereas the burnishers, which I think that's the English that calling it, that's what they mean is a blender, but it doesn't behave the same. This is a little bit harder and tends to leave more of a
I always just used a white or a very light color to burnish with. And Prismacolor, I would just take it, and to me, burnishing was just smashing down all of the texture. And that's probably a very I'm not a seasoned watercolor expert, but when I did that, usually I got the result I was looking for. After a while, you built up more waxy surface and you had no more tooth. So I'm sure an expert had a solution for that, but that's all I did, is I would just burnish with a lighter color and or sometimes even a dark color, but it smashes it all and levels it out, and so it looked more like paint than colored pencil.
Gotcha. Well, like a colored pencil artist, what he wouldn't want to do, or she wouldn't want to do, is put in 90 hours on a drawing and then be trying to burnish something and get a shine on it, after you've done all this work. So, I mean, there's ways to get rid of it, but depending on the paper you have, you can ruin the entire drawing. There's people that are more expert at it than I am, for sure.
Yeah.
But there's people doing museum quality work with colored pencils that's just unbelievable.
I don't doubt it for a minute.
If you get that Colored Pencil magazine that comes out in digital form, our friend Harry, Ivor Harrison's got the artist gear guide. He features lots of like.
I tried to find his channel.
pencils.
What's the name of his channel?
It's the Art Gear Guide, I think, is the name of his channel. But
okay,
maybe I'm remembering it in the wrong order. I think Val knows Harry. Certainly, there's a bunch of people that will know who Harry is and be able to give a link to his channel here. But and maybe we could pop it into the description of the video, because Harry's a great resource for colored pencils, just as Lisa is. But more importantly, I just want to say that blending, burnishing, it takes some work, and it takes some getting used to, and it's definitely a technique of its own.
Yeah, are you familiar with famous colored pencil artist Bill Nelson?
Bill Nelson.
He's actually an illustrator. Yeah, he didn't.
What years was he active?
It goes back at least to the 80s and probably earlier, but I think he's still active. He didn't do a lot of either. Blending or burnishing. He kept it very textural, and yet it was almost photorealistic, but it always had that sort of flannel-y kind of a look to it. Okay. And and when I used to do a lot of colored pencil work over airbrush, it was the same way. You don't burnish or blend. You layer. Basically, that's your blending.
Well, and you layer. The better the colored pencil,
the easier it layers.
The better the colored pencil, the better your layering is going to be. That's another thing. Yeah. As in watercolors, if you can get a lot of good glazes going, and its transparency is good, you like that. That's important. Well, in colored pencils, I think it's a lot of colored pencil artists will say, "Hey, if I can layer, that's great."
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, you want to talk about watercolor pencils?
Well, yeah. I mean, so we've gone from the humble number 2 to the great things you can do with a colored pencil to all of a sudden, are you kidding me? You can do watercolors with pencils? Yep. That's unbelievable. Yep. So when I first saw that, when I was maybe, I don't know, 20 or 25 years old, Stephen, I thought that God had come down and given this idea to somebody magically. Hang on a second. I'm going to get you the.
Yeah,
I need to show you some.
my reaction
some of
was a
that.
little
But anyway,
different. But we'll talk
watercolors
about
are
that.
just watercolor pencils are, I guess, an amazing engineering feat that you can actually do it. And there are better ones and there are worse ones.
Sure.
So it's important to consider that when you think about what watercolor pencils. Now this is the mad scientist lab where I keep all of my secret files.
Oh wow,
Steve.
look at that! You got all your test swatches in there, huh?
I do. I have like tons of test swatches, but I just wanted to highlight a couple important ones for you. I would like to have organized this sooner, but they're the Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle Pencil. That's the Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle Pencil. Is probably, can you hear me okay, Steve?
Yeah.
Sorry,
yeah.
I just bumped my thing. It's probably the finest pencil made in the world, finest watercolor pencil.
Okay.
You can just do so much great work with that pencil, and it's so amazingly well made that people just, once they get their hands on that watercolor pencil, it's basically like using M. Graham in a pencil.
Okay. Wow.
That's how good it is. I mean, I know that's high praise, but they really are spectacular pencils. So anyway, I was going to show you a couple swatches, but I don't want to sort through. It's boring for watching me go through all these swatches, but I'll find some and I'll post them.
Interesting story for me, because my reaction to watercolor pencils initially was the opposite of yours. I thought,
okay,
what a piece of crap gimmick is this? And there's, I avoided them for a long time. And really, I guess about the time I started this channel, I mean, I never painted with them. I never used them. And about the time I started this channel, and I started looking at other people's art videos and stuff, and I'm thinking, okay, Steve, maybe you were a little hasty to judgment. And I was watching one of Lindsay Wyrick's videos, where
Lindsay.
she was doing her drawing and her outlining and some of her detailing with a colored pencil. And then as she painted in, it just sort of, the line just sort of blended with the paint. And I thought, how cool is that? And so I started using it that way. I love being able to get like a colored line on something rather than just a graphite line. And I still don't use colored pencil or watercolor pencil as a painting medium per se, or where like some people do, they scribble it down and then they wet it and turn it all into paint.
You mean like
I still use it as a line drawing apparatus that will tone. Basically, that's my favorite way to use it. I'm not saying you shouldn't use it any other way. That's just kind of my favorite way. And a lot of what I have is Derwent. I have this set. You can tell me what you think of this set.
Yeah.
This is the
I'm
Albrecht.
Gonna mention those.
This is the Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencil set from Faber Castel, and they're not bad. But
if you don't
anyway,
know who Albrecht Dürer is, you should look it up too. By the way.
Oh man.
So, let's talk about those though in particular.
Okay.
So I'm going to hold up. That's Albrecht Dürer. Can you see that a little bit?
Nice.
Is it blurry or can you see it?
No, I can see it.
Okay. And this is like a student grade pentalic. Now look at that and compare that to that. And there's no comparison.
Yeah.
Right? There's no comparison.
That looks like high quality stuff.
It's just, now here's Derwent Inktense, which people really like. But the problem is most of the colors, well, quite a few of the colors aren't light fast.
Okay. I've heard that.
These are pretty light fast. Now let me show you the very best pencil, in my opinion, in the world. right here. These are the Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle pencils.
Okay.
And that's the kind of vivid color, vivid, bright color you can get with those particular pencils. Now, again, you may not notice an extreme difference between the very good quality German-made Albrecht Dürer, Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer, and these Swiss-made Caran d'Ache pencils. But believe me when I say there is a difference.
Okay, I believe you.
It's not a big difference, but there's a significant difference. Now, the reason people like these is because they're about half the cost.
Okay.
They're about half the, so you can buy a set of 120 Albrecht Dürer pencils for what you're going to pay for three sets, three small sets of about 70 pencils for the Caran d'Ache.
Oh.
So that's the biggest difference there.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
the finest pencil made, I think, in the world, watercolor pencil, is the Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle. Now they make a bunch of different other kinds of pencils that you can do watercolor with too. So does Faber-Castell. They make the Art Grip watercolor pencil, the Faber-Castell
I have a
watercolor
few
pencil,
of those. Yeah.
which are pretty good. You know, they're good pencils. But again, if you want to look at any of these watercolor pencils and get an in-depth knowledge of how they work and how I rated them,
Well, I have
check out
several
the
Caran d'Ache super colors.
Super colors are great. They had Super Color 1, Super Color 2.
Yeah, it was 2.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was 2. Well, what I did is, and I discovered this as a great sketching technique for myself back in January when I went to Arizona to visit in-laws, or not in-laws, my grandparents. I had some sketching that I wanted to do, and my schedule was iffy, and so I was kind of hitting places on the run. And one place I went, it was kind of raining. So what I did is I took some Caran d'Ache super colors and a sketchbook, and if I only had a few minutes, I would sketch the whole thing out with roughly the color, like, you know, roughly the earth color, whatever it was. And then I would take a water brush, my Pentel water brush, and just very lightly tone everything. And so when I was done in my sketchbook, and I would take a photo, and then I would have a very light tone value study in my sketchbook that took me only a few minutes, and a photo. And then I ended up going back to the hotel room and doing a finished painting. And that whole workflow went just perfect. So now that's kind of one of my favorite things to do with watercolor pencils is, you know, some quick sketching and toning. And then it gives me a great schematic sort of, or underpainting to finish the painting back at the house or my studio or wherever I am.
Those are great points. Now, if you are not a colored watercolor pencilists, whatever you want, whatever the name is for that, Steve, say you're not that guy that does that, or that gal that does that. I think what you have to do is, you know, consider where these fit in your practice. So if you're just trying to get like thumbnails where you just want a rough idea, as you mentioned, of the color or the basic value, you know, you can do tonal values in black and white. You don't need a colored pencil or a watercolor pencil. But if you're doing a preliminary oil study, you might want a decent quality watercolor pencil to do that for you and give you and put it in a thumbnail. Now, I'm hoping you have your thumbnails within reach, because I'd like some people to see some of the thumbnails you do, the little ones in your sketchbook.
Yeah,
those are pretty awesome.
Yeah, actually, I don't have the pre-sketches that I did. They're all painted now. I could show you the finished, but like just to give you an example, this was the Caran d'Ache super color. And what I did is I just bought up a bunch of earthy kind of tones and grays. Yeah. Grays and browns and greens.
Yeah.
And
because you're doing
landscape. Basically underpainting tones.
Okay. Okay.
And that's how I used them. And that was just a great process for me. I am not, and I'm probably never going to be a watercolor pencil painter.
Right.
Where my painting is all watercolor pencil. I'm just probably not going to do that. I find that a little bit tedious when I can paint whole passages in wash in a fraction of the time. But it appeals to somebody, some people, because they feel like they have more control over the rendering and that sort of thing. But as a sketching medium and laying down the initial drawing underpaintings, I love them.
Well, now that was a really good point you just brought up there, and one I was going to mention, it's on my list here. If you are somebody like I was, who is fearful of watercolors because you can't control them, they go wherever the hell they want. I mean, part of the appeal of watercolors is you can get very loose with watercolors.
Yes.
But that's part of the turnoff for somebody who's been a very fine pencil artist or done, very disciplined or photorealistic work. My point to them is, if you want to get over the fear of watercolors, a really good way to get into that medium is through a watercolor pencil.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. If somebody who's comfortable with drawing, it's a great way to start.
And that's how I got into it, because I was like, hey, they make watercolor pencils. This is amazing. I'm gonna try one. And that kind of opened up a whole world to me that I didn't have in my art discipline, or whatever you want to call it. But that's a great point. Yeah.
Some people do things like a paper palette. They'll scribble the watercolor pencil onto a paper palette or a Yupo, a sheet of Yupo or Yupo, and then they'll lift that and paint. That all seems tedious to me, but if that's what you have and you want to try it, sure. And some people will just flick paint right brush.
Yes, they will. Hey, let me talk about something that I have kind of a pet peeve.
Yeah.
That I talk a lot about on my channel, and people are like, hey, you mention that almost every video, and there's a reason for it, because pencil manufacturers haven't come around to Marty's way of thinking yet. But if you buy a pencil and it's a cheap pencil, like say a Crayola or a Prang, and nothing against those, because they're fine for wherever you are at in your evolution as an artist, and I even recommend things like that. But one thing that pencil manufacturers won't do is they won't put the color of the pencil on the actual pencil, or they'll put it on this tip and hope that everybody's not colorblind.
Yeah.
And so, for that reason, like Derwent will put, see this, Steve, this says chocolate on it, right? So I know it's a chocolate pencil. It's near the end, so I'm not going to be erasing it. Other companies will put the name of the color down here if they do put it on. And then as soon as you sharpen the pencil, the color's gone.
Yeah, Karen Dosh does it.
Karen Dosh is very good at it. Now, if you get into their higher end luminance pencil, look what they do. They not only color the tip, but they put the color name way up at the top, where there's no chance you're going to sharpen that off. And I just
you can use it right down to a stub.
Right down to the stub. And that is the sign of a thoughtful pencil manufacturer in my mind. And so many out there just forget that people, could be colorblind, or that I want to, even if the colors are closely matched. Have you ever had that, Steve? I mean, I'm looking at look at this, Steve. Hang on, let me show you something, man. So, and you got me on a roll here, because I'm excited and passionate about pencils, brother. But I mean, all those reds, right? I mean, what if something's so close in value? I want to know the difference between a lake red and a what they call a rouge madder, or whatever it is. How am I going to know that unless I can read the color on the pencil?
Yeah.
It's
very
helpful
true
to me. And so that's one of the things I like to talk about. And I've written all of the major pencil manufacturers, especially the ones that don't have the name, and said, hey, think about this, or have you considered it? And some have actually changed their manufacturing practice. I'm not saying I did it, but I'm sure they received enough complaints where they were like, okay, we'll put the name on. I mean, for 0.01 cent more per pencil, you think you could print it on there,
Yeah, ought to be.
I'll get off my soapbox there.
Well, let's move on quickly because time is going, and let's get
Yes.
into some pen and ink. And
Yes. Don't
we'll
forget
just
at the end, Steve, don't forget at the end, I gotta give some mentions about wet paint's
absolutely,
spectacular sales they have going on right now.
absolutely, we'll do that. Well, let's just talk about favorites. And I mean, man, you know what? The time we spent on pencils, we could spend twice that much time on pen and ink. Really,
Right,
you
you're
know,
right.
from the lowly Micron, Pigma Micron here, and this is
Which is a
one of
great
your.
pen.
It is. It's still one of the easiest ones to find. Just about any craft store or art store has them. I've got those. I've got Statlers. I love those. These. I've got a set of these Copic multi-liners here,
Yes.
and all of these kind of fit what I would call the mono weight category. They don't vary.
Now there's a big difference between those two pens you just held up, the Staedtler and the Copics.
Okay.
And I actually prefer the Staedtlers. Those are my favorite.
Yeah.
The number 5, that's an awesome. The big difference is you cannot refill these Staedtlers, but those Copics you can refill.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
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 And I like the Copics a lot. I haven't, experienced this myself yet, but excuse me.
No problem.
Somebody said that the Copics last longer. They don't run out of ink as quickly. I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, that might be true, but the Staedtler tip for me is more durable. I don't have as much. I mean, the Copics are excellent, but the Staedtler are just in a class by themselves. I love this pen, and nobody's going to convince me otherwise.
Yeah.
Here's the Pentel brush pen. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I was going to get into that kind of as a separate category.
Yeah.
This right here, if you're interested in brush pens, go to Jet Pens. I'll put the link down below. They have several sampler sets. This is their brush pen sampler set number 1. It's got the one you just showed, Marty.
Oh, the Pentel.
Yeah. If that's your favorite for the same reason as it is for me, it's because that's a real brush.
That is a real brush.
Those fibers will separate. It's not a felt tip or a rubbery tip. And that's just a fantastic inking brush. Just really fantastic.
Yes, and I find the ink in here to be excellent and dark. The only darker ink I could find in terms of black ink is the carbon pen.
Yeah,
which is very dark.
And this one is this is also Pentel, I think, but it's just a larger version of the same thing. A real brush.
And you can refill that with ink.
Yeah, you can.
There you go. That's excellent.
And
there's a Tombow. There's a Tombow ink pen.
These right here, all of these are, I would call them either fiber tips or flexible kind of rubbery tips.
I think you have the
and
same.
They're good though. There's some good ones in there. And my favorite is actually a zebra.
Okay.
There's a zebra, there's a Kuretake. The best thing to do though, to kind of familiarize yourself with this, is to go to Jet Pens and just put in the search bar, put sampler, and you'll see these. You'll see any number of different sets. They have a brush pen sampler number 1, brush pen sampler number 2, and these are great. These are great inking pens with Inktober being here.
Yes.
They vary a little bit in weight, but they have a sample sheet where they've lined out each one. And if you want to just order their sampler sets, are about $28. And in this particular set, I think you get 5 pens.
Yeah.
And you can get sampler set number 2. They have a bigger brush sampler set. Their sampler sets are really neat. And another thing that they do at Jet Pens, I'll put the link for that, is they have guides. Their guides page, or it's not a page, it's like a series of pages, is excellent. They compare just about every category of supply. So if you, doesn't matter what you want, if you want to get white, like deleter white or white out kind of stuff, white acrylic or white gouache kind of, I don't even know what to call it. This kind of stuff, white ink.
Yeah, sure.
They have a guide for that. They have a guide where they compare them all.
Oh.
They tell you which ones are more water soluble, which ones are more opaque. They do that for just about every category they have, from fountain pens to fountain pen inks to brush pens to gel pens.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, definitely take advantage of the Jet Pens guides. They are absolutely invaluable, and it's just free, and it's in their top menu. Just go go up there and find guides, and you know, it's one of the best buying information areas that I've seen.
Yeah, it's a great tip. I should mention the question I get a lot about inks among my sketching friends and the urban sketchers or the Twin Cities Metro sketchers are, which inks are waterproof and which are not, because depending on the artist, they might want to do ink wash because that's its own discipline, and or they might want very waterproof ink to outline their watercolor and even be able to watercolor over that with transparent watercolors, and they don't want any washes or running or spidering of the ink when they do that.
Sure.
So very important to read about the ink and understand whether or not it is waterproof or not. And there are better grades of ink that you can buy. You know, people talk about Noodler's ink and these sort of specialty inks, but look at the same thing you look for in watercolor paints. You know, what's the quality like? What are the pigments like if it's colored ink? Things like that. And whether or not it's made with, I think it's shellac, which can clog a fountain pen. So you have to be careful about that. But mainly waterproof or non-waterproof inks. Is it India ink? Is it permanent ink? Is it, this or that? I've used inks before and done whole elaborate drawings, and they've been up for like 6 months and they turned brown. They started black, but they faded and turned brown. Which is an interesting,
low quality pigments or what?
Yes. So be careful about that. Now the Staedtler says it's a pigment liner,
right,
and then waterproof. However, that doesn't mean you put a line down and immediately slap some watercolor on it.
Right.
You have to let that ink dry.
Although the Staedtler and especially the microns are some of the fastest drying that I've seen. So
Very
you can
fast.
almost do that. You can almost do that.
Very fast.
It's, this is another one that I found out about on Tio's channel. This Uniball Air.
Yes, I think I have that.
That's a pretty nice pen, and it is waterproof. Not immediately, but pretty closely. And you can get bold, medium, and this is a micro. Although they're not super fine, but
and a lot of times, Steve, the tips of the pens will tell you what size they are and whether they're a brush or a fine tip, type ink pen as well.
Good
Just
point.
another tip to look
Good
at.
I'm going to move quickly to fountain pens. That's a huge category, I realize. I'm just going to touch on my favorites, and you can talk about yours.
Yeah.
These are probably my favorites right here. These are two right here are my Lamy Safaris.
Yeah.
This is a medium point, or well, it's actually a fine, but it's more like a medium. And this see-through one is extra fine. But I love the Lamy Safaris. This right here, if you know anything about fountain pens, this is a flex tip. And all fountain pens have flex tips to a degree. But they're very expensive, most of them. This one's not. This is a Noodler's, I want to say Noodler's Ahab. It's less than $20, and it has a very flexible tip, which means it'll spread when you put pressure on it, and it's piston filled. And this is probably one of my favorites. I don't necessarily like the styling of it. It looks like one of those desk pens. This is a carbon.
That's the carbon pen.
Platinum carbon.
You won't get blacker ink than that unless you get an octopus.
And it's permanent for sketching, and yet it's safe for fountain pens. So those are just some quick recommendations. And if I use a fountain pen, it's usually one of those. How about you?
Well, I have made the mistake of falling prey to that fountain pen. There's a guy that does fountain pen collecting or whatever on YouTube.
Yeah.
And he recommended a few pens. I mean, if it comes in a case, you probably spend too much. So I got this Italian pen. It's like Visconti. It's a very nice pen. You know, it has its own house. But I end up using, I think this is the Safari, the Lamy that you use.
That's it.
And I use that a lot, and I use this. I don't even know what brand pen this is, but it's got a really nice tip, and I use that. But you could fit what is it? I don't know.
Is that a Metropolitan Pilot?
It could be. It says something on there, but I can't read it. The point being is you could fit what I know about fountain pens in a thimble, literally. I'm not that smart about them. I just know that they're fun to use. I like using them. And then if you get the wrong one and you're using it on the wrong paper, all you're going to have is heartache and misery.
Just frustration.
So buy a good quality fountain pen and you'll be happy.
I love them.
You don't have to spend a lot.
I think they're expressive. They're more expressive. I mean, than the mono weight pens like a Micron. You can be a little more expressive. And one tip that a lot of people don't even know is that if you have one that's kind of a medium weight, like this Lamy here, you can turn them over. You can actually turn them over and draw with them upside down. And you cut your line weight almost in half.
And then that's a sign of a really, I think, a decent fountain pen if you can do that.
Yeah, and you can get just hairlines with what right side up might be a normal weight line. So it's just a great field sketching pen. If you have, like you said, if you have a good one, and you have good ink. I fill mine, except for the platinum carbon, which is their ink. I fill mine with Doodler's Bulletproof Black.
Yes.
And it's mostly waterproof on most papers, although it takes a little while to dry.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, here before we get to, I mean, I just wanted to mention quickly, Steve, you're going to get into maybe a dip pen or two here, which is pretty much standard. But before you get to that, to back up a second, I have a bag of like ballpoint pens. And these happen to be just, because you can use a blue Bic ballpoint pen and do a brilliant drawing with it.
Yeah.
But I use these because you can get some nice washes out of these. These are Pilot the G series Pilot pens. And I can get all different color and manner of washes out of these inks. And it's like painting with ink washes.
You can sketch and shade with a ball. I was gonna mention mine too. This is my favorite. This is a Zebra. Let's see, it's a F301.
Okay.
And you can almost shade like a pencil with this thing. It's pretty responsive. It will loosen a little in water, so you can get some toning. But I just love this pen, this ballpoint pen for sketching.
Looks pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about the only ballpoint pen I use, but I do love it.
It's just fun to do a ballpoint pen drawing once in a while,
It is.
So, yeah, what the heck is this? This isn't like I don't know. The lever opens. I don't know. This is weird. Can you see this? It's got some nice decoration on it. This thing is like a lever.
I have a few fountain pens I didn't bring out, but that reminds me of my Pilot Metropolitan maybe, but I'm not sure.
You can spend $5,000 on a font. Apparently, you know, like a Mont Blanc
Oh my
or
word,
Caran
yeah,
d'Ache.
yeah, with
You
the
know,
14 karat gold tips and all that
yeah, I don't need
jazz.
all that. I'm not,
No,
you know, not in that atmosphere. And besides, I don't really use them enough to justify that expenditure. But yeah, we should talk about dip pens for a second.
yeah,
Which
let's
ones
do
do you
that.
use?
Well, I'm there's two parts to that. I'm kind of taken with holders. I, you know,
I,
kind of the
look at
same
you.
obsession I have for mechanical pencils I have for dip pen holders. Here's my
I
dip
think
pen
you just like
holders.
buying stuff. Look at you.
Yeah,
That's
these.
crazy.
I mean, I
Because
have
there's
some.
nice ones.
Whoa, whoa. I mean, I have these nice, you know, hand turned ones. This came from Art of the Book, a company called Art of the Book. This one I made myself. Turned that one myself.
Wow.
And I really like that because I like a chunkier grip. And
Did you go to a wood lathe? Do you have one in
yeah,
the
I have a
house?
wood lathe that I turn that on.
Do
You know,
you?
and then you just drill and put that insert in there.
Yeah, that's
And
it. Where did you get the insert?
you can buy them on Etsy, or there's a couple other sources.
Oh, I
Uh,
thought maybe you took it out of an old pen or something.
no, well, actually, when I was learning how to make them, I did that with some cheap ones. This is the most recent one that I turned.
Oh,
And I
very
like
nice.
that design. It feels good in my hand. You know, I don't want to get too deep into the holders because a holder is a holder. This, though, if you're just going to go online like to Amazon and buy one, this is the one I'd recommend. This is a Takakawa.
That's what
And
I
it's,
have. Yeah.
yeah, I love it because it's got
That's
a cap.
beautiful.
It's got a cap and it's got a rubberized grip. The thickness of it, the grip is nice. You can put a nib in there and keep it in there if you want.
Yes.
And it's used a lot by comic and manga artists. And this is a great, if you're going to do any Inktober with dip pen, this is a great one to use right here.
That's
I
high
don't know if
quality.
you want to talk about holders at all. Otherwise, we can talk about nibs.
You know what I got, Steve? Like
What?
speedball. You know, you go in, you get the little speedball plastic one from the, you know, same one they've been making since 1938.
Well,
You know,
you know, if I had any sense, that's probably I'd be happy with that. But I have to turn it into some kind of nerd obsession.
well, no, because hang on a second, Steve. What you said, what that one you got? I just bought this at Wet Paint the other day.
Yeah, there you go.
That's the same like you have, man.
Yeah,
Japanese, it's high quality, it's
it is.
beautiful.
Yeah, this is kind of cool. This is a hunt, and then but I found it
Oh,
kind of thin, so I added this thing that's called pencil grip because I like on a pen, I
yeah.
like a chunkier grip, and this is like a rubber grip, and that works just great on this thing.
You are obsessed. That's
Tell
good.
you what. Well, anyway, let's talk about the nibs because
Yeah, those are different ones that do different stuff.
so
right?
many. I mean, most people have bought, you know, go in and they'll buy the simple little hunt speedball variety kit, and that's a great way to start. But a
It's not
lot
where
of
you're going to end
inkers,
up, though.
a lot of inkers end up with this one, which is the Zebra G, and it's one of the best. They call it a manga comic tip, but any kind of dip pen drawing that you want to do, this will do it. And it's either this one or what they call the Nico G, and they're almost identical. This is a Nico G, and you won't be able really to tell the difference. But they're just really good dip pens, have just a really good amount of flex. They can give you nice variation from thin to thick, very expressive. And those are my recommendations. There are a lot of the Hunt Speedball drawing nibs are fine, but I just the Nico G or the Zebra G, I still think you can't beat them.
Very
You
good.
can't beat them. You can really tell the difference in the responsiveness. And
There again, you've that's something I know very little about. So dip pens always kind of irritated me because I have to keep dipping them.
yeah, yeah.
But I
Well,
like the script you can get from it, like the penman, the master penman. They'll use something like that, you know, for their calligraphy stuff, and I love that work.
well, one of the tips is, and we'll just talk about this as the Nico G, I think. You need to make sure that you break it in by either rubbing it with toothpaste, or a lot of people will run a lighter over it. Just
Wow.
they come with mold oil, you know, oil in the mold and manufacturing process. You got
Okay.
to get that oil off of there, and
Not mold as in the spores, just
right, whatever they use to form these. And
okay.
then you need to dip it past that hole, past these little vents in the hole to fill it up.
Right.
And you'd be surprised, on a quality nib like this, you can actually ink for a good little while.
Wow.
You don't have to. A lot of people think it's like dip, scratch, 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 dip, scratch, scratch, scratch. If you're doing that, you got the wrong nib. Well, I can tell you. You
Great.
should be able to ink for, you know, a little bit before you have to re-dip it.
That's a great tip. Yeah, I had no idea. I just dip, dip, dip all the time with the dip pens.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And you know, it's over time you figure out what you like. This particular Hunt Speedball one, this big one, it just has a lot of flex. I mean, you can widen this out and get a really, really thick line with it.
just by pressing a little harder.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Good.
So,
Well, let me mention one thing while we're on the topic. Wet Paint has some Lamy sets right now. They're trying to, they got them at a really good deal. So you get the whole box set with a bunch of stuff in it and the pen for cheaper than it would cost you to buy just the pen.
just the pen.
So if you're a fountain pen guy or gal and you're really looking for, you know, maybe to get into your first pen, or you want to have a nice quality Lamy pen, go to Wet Paint, because I think they had maybe, I don't know, 8 or 10 sets left, and you can pick one up for near dirt cheap, cheaper than the pen.
That's cool. Yeah, I saw that they had those. I think I saw it in an email or something.
Yeah,
that's
then
good.
You get
Yeah,
the whole thing. You know.
Yeah, Lamys are great. You know, and you gotta own 3 or 4 or 5.
Right. Exactly.
Just, you could put different colored ink in them, right?
That's right. That's right. Let me look what this, because I want to make sure I mention this too. Because you know, as long as we're on the topic of wet paint, would you mind me? Would you mind me mentioning some stuff?
No, please go right ahead.
So 40% off all M gram. That's paint, acrylics, watercolors, gouache. Buy 3 tubes, get 1 tube of equal or lesser value free.
Wow.
That's a pretty good deal if you're buying, you know, watercolor. Daniel Smith, acrylics, Winsor & Newton, Flake White, if you're an oil painter. Whiskey Painter watercolor palettes, 20% off. The limited edition custom Schminke half pan watercolor set, which you know, they sold out of 500 and then they had another 150 back. They sold out of all of those paints sets in, like, I don't know, a couple weeks here in the spring, summer. So they ordered a bunch for the fall. So they already have, like, I think it's 175 or 200 pre-orders for the 500 sets that they're bringing in. This set, different from the Marilyn Garber set in that this one features all of Schminke's new colors. MSRP on the set, it's 18 half pans, 12 colors hold a total of 18 half pans in the set. Retails for $225.
Wow.
Wet Paint selling it for $69.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So go there, get yourself that, you know, it's a limited edition with the new Schminke colors that they just came out with. and it's got a really nice variety of those colors. So don't
Cool.
forget that. You need to put that stuff on something. If you're a sketcher, all the Stillman and Byrne Alpha, that's the heavy duty wire-bound sketchbooks, 9x12s. They're all like $20. You can't, I mean, it's hard to go wrong with that.
Yeah.
Remember I was telling you about,
We'll put the link to wet paint. Then that's
yeah, I won't read them all, but here, that Lamy set I was telling you about,
Yeah.
it's $32. And
That's
I mean, the
nice.
pen itself is like 40 normally or something
Yeah,
like
you're
that.
right. You're right.
So yeah. So, and too bad, Steve, I wish you could come up and hang out with me, because October 19th and 21 at Wet Paint is the M Graham weekend.
No.
So, yes.
Oh.
So you have a bunch of famous artists in, and they're going to be. Steve, you should go right now. And what is that cheap airline, Spirit? Just go right now. You pay for your airfare out. You can just stay with me. We'll spend the whole weekend. We'll drink some wine.
Oh my
Don't
word.
drink wine. I don't drink. We'll go over to the wet paint, you know.
Oh my
Have a great
word.
time.
You
And
better
you can do a demo.
you better video all that, my friend.
I think I'm going to have to. That should be a lot of fun. But anyway, those are some of the deals going on at Wet Paint. And now they don't pay me to say any of this. If they
Yeah.
did, I'd be a rich man.
Yeah.
So
Oh, they're a good group. They're a good group.
good people.
Yeah.
Tell them I sent you. Tell them Steve and I sent you.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, they were very friendly when I ordered. I mean, you know, and I got very personable emails, follow up. So it's great.
Yeah.
It was great dealing with them.
Yeah, they're awesome. And
Yeah.
they treat each customer like that's their only customer. And I think that's the success
Yeah.
for their business, you know, like you do, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
I have one tip I wanted to mention before I forgot. When you're dealing with dip pens, dip pens, there is a lot of flexibility with a dip pen, and that's where they really shine. You can use a lot of people just think, oh well, you know, it's just India ink. I'll just use a brush pen or a micron. You can put gouache in these things. I have drawn trees with watercolor. You can get watercolor. You can get something like Dr. Martin's Hydrus watercolor and feed these with a, the eyedropper that comes in there. Or I've even just kind of mixed up really concentrated puddle, and then you load it in the back. You just, the way you load a brush is with, or a nib is with a brush. Just take a saturated brush, concentrated color, and you can load your nib, and you can draw with watercolor. It's great for detailing if you want to go into something and do some hatching. It's a great way to put white gouache or white acrylic or any of the white colored inks, all the colored inks. Just, there's nothing, fountain pen or any other kind of pen, there's nothing quite as versatile as a dip pen. So that's kind of its claim to fame. And I just wanted to mention that before I forgot about it.
Oh, very good. That's excellent, Steve. We should probably answer some questions before we close out the show.
I think so, but first, before we do that, let's briefly,
Yes.
very briefly talk about Inktober.
Oh yeah, Inktober. It's the reason for the season.
Yeah, and I'm already behind. It started Sunday, and I haven't done anything yet. I'm going to end this video. I'll put the link to the prompts. You don't have to do the prompts. You don't even have to do daily. I don't do the daily challenge. I just don't have the time. I wish I did. But it's a great reason or way to pull out your ink supplies and get familiar with them. And of course, I love doing ink and wash with watercolor. So that's, sometimes I think it just helps to have a challenge like this so you can focus your material thinking and your material development. And I don't know what you're going to do. I think last year, maybe I ended up with 6, maybe 7. I didn't do all 30, but still, it was fun to participate. You can go, you can post your ink drawings or your ink and wash drawings on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Use the hashtag Inktober and Inktober 2017. Use both of them, and you can go on there and you can search those hashtags and see what everybody else is doing. And there's some amazing work. I mean, just some really amazing work. Yes. Are you gonna do any of this, Marty?
Well, I've been more or less a pretty lightweight participant in the past. I have a
Me
good
too.
friend,
Me too.
Larry Ehrlich. You know, he's my buddy. We go sketching all the
Yeah.
time. Larry and I sketch every weekend. He is an ink artist exclusively. He doesn't do watercolors or oils like I do. So he does a lot for Inktober. And in the past, he's tried to knock out a drawing a day for the 31 days. And I just saw the stress and heartache that man went through. And I said, I'm like, I'm not doing that, Larry. I'll
Right.
try to do whatever I do. And a lot of times it'll be ink wash or something, and I'll post it up. But
Okay.
I've been a pretty, you're right about the focus, Steve. You're right that it's a good prompting to give you the focus. But man, I don't know what's wrong with me. I just don't, I'm not a big participant. I
Yeah.
need to, though. Yeah.
No,
I,
it
I,
takes a
I
commitment.
will.
It actually does. And you know, Jake Parker, the guy who invented it or founded it, even said, he said, if this is going to be stress, he says it's not supposed to be. Don't do
Sure.
the challenge. Don't do the daily challenge unless it
Yeah.
excites you.
Yeah. Right.
Unless it like really,
Yeah.
you know, gets you excited, motivated. If this is
Yeah.
like, oh, what am I going to do? Oh no, I got to
Yeah.
do another ink drawing. You know, don't even bother. It's just pull out. If you just really want to do some nice ink drawing, really want to challenge yourself to do some good ink drawing, you know, do one, do two, do three,
Yeah.
whatever. Do four. Go online at least and look and see what other people are doing.
That's the
It's
funnest part.
worth it for that.
That's exactly right. I mean, I got enough stress at work. I don't want to do art stress, I'm
Yeah.
just trying, but it's fun to look at other people's work, and some people just knock stuff out, and
Yeah.
it's really good, high quality stuff. And I often look at their stuff and I wonder, Steve, are these people employed? I
You know
mean,
what?
looks
Yeah,
like they took them 8 hours to do that drawing.
I don't
I'm
know.
like, come on,
It
man.
actually really energizes some people.
Yes, it
But
does.
it's really cool to see what they do. I know one illustrator. I follow her channel.
Yeah.
Many Smalls, Many Small, I think. Anyway, she's doing all haunted houses. They'll do a theme.
Oh,
Like they may not follow the prompts, but every day she's doing a different haunted house, which is kind of cool. Jake himself is doing. He's using a traveler theme, so and of course he follows the prompts.
yeah.
So each day he does a different sort of, and a lot of his characters are fantasy based or
Sure.
comic fantasy based kind of, and he does a lot of children's illustration. But he's going to do a different type of traveler every day,
Yeah.
adhering to the prompt. And you have a lot of people out there doing that. They'll take like one character, and that character, they'll always draw that character, but they'll put them in a different situation. It's very
Sure.
popular with illustrators. Very popular with illustrators.
Steve, who puts the prompts out?
Jake Parker, the guy who founded it. He puts the
Oh,
prompts out, and again, you don't have to follow. And there are a lot of alternative prompt lists floating around out there,
oh, sure.
based on other themes. So
Sure. Oh, that's cool.
yeah, it's mainly a celebration of the pen and ink or the ink medium, and
Yeah.
that's all it is. And
Could be
it's
whatever you want. Yeah.
yep.
Good.
If you want to participate, you just do.
All right. Well, I think we're getting some questions.
Yeah, let's go to questions.
Want me to read a couple off to you?
Sure.
Let's go. I'm going to go back in time a little bit. My friend Val in the chat room is very particular about the way you format questions, everybody. So please use the word question, colon, and then, or whatever, and then put your question after that.
It helps us find the questions easier and quicker.
Yeah, exactly. And don't use all caps, because then it'll seem like you're yelling at us. All right. So one person wanted to know, Tammy, by the way, Hickey, wanted to know, have I tried the Cretacolor Aqua Brick, and what do I think of them? I believe I tried them at Wet Paint, and they're similar to the, is it the Art Graph colored, I don't know what they're made of, but
I'm not familiar.
yeah. Is that what you're talking about, Tammy? I'm not sure, but if you're talking about that, I think I tried them out. I just think my checkout basket was full. So here's a question for you, Steve. Right here. Steve, the blue lead in the clutch. This is from Val. How well would that erase from wood?
It probably erases better than it does from paper. It doesn't erase great from paper. It's really just a colored pencil. It's sort of like, to compare, I would compare it to the Verathins, the Prismacolor Verathins.
Yeah.
It's a hard colored pencil. And I don't know what, I guess it's sort of wax based, but it's very, very hard, not as soft as like Prismacolor. You can, on paper, you can get it off, and you don't get it completely off. I mean, if you have an electric eraser, you could. I imagine on wood, though, it'd probably come out a little easier than it would on
unless
paper.
it gets in the grain.
Yeah.
Unless somehow it gets in the grain of the wood. But yeah, I don't know either. But I suppose we could try and experiment and see. Here's a question. Yeah. Do you have more on that, Steve?
No, that's it.
Oh, okay. Millie McElvain, she asked a question here. She's just getting started. What pen should I use to write word scripture sentences on my watercolor paintings? Don't want a fountain pen or dip pen, please. So, like, what would you recommend, Steve?
Well, the first thing I'd ask is what kind of line do you want? If you want a mono weight line, then you're looking at something like the Micron or the Stettler, which you can get in a variety of weights. But it's a mono weight line. It does not. You can't vary the line at all. You can't make it thick and thin.
Or Steve, if she wanted, she could use this Stettler, which is the same ink, same pen, but look at the tip.
Oh, yeah.
That's an interesting cap, right? That means that this is a calligraphy pen. And when you turn it, it'll give you the different, you can do calligraphy with it. So if you like that, you could try that. But yeah, those would be my same recommendations. I agree with you, Steve.
And some of these brush pens that I mentioned, that Jet Pens has a sampler, they're pretty good writing pens. Like some of them have a fairly hard, like this one. Let's see if you can see that. Has a fairly hard kind of a plastic tip, but it's flexible. And you have enough control where you can write a fairly mono weight line, but you can press a little bit, and it gives you a little bit of variation in the line. So some of these hard tip brush pens will work.
Hey, we got a question.
Permanent ink. It's permanent ink.
Got a question from Steve, from Mark Campbell here, MD Campbell. He asks, desert island scenario, pick 3 supplies you'd want with you on a desert island. Pencil, pen, paper.
Oh, man.
You can only pick one, Steve.
They'd have to be edible. No, I'm just kidding. Pencil, pen, paper. Probably, let's see. Just about any sketchbook, just about any B or HB pencil. Pen, I don't know, something that would last a while, I guess. Just basic, just basic. Something like the Statler pigment liner or one of the Copics. Just because I know I wouldn't need to refill them with ink and they would last. And hey, I could make a fire and pick a stick out of the fire, and draw with the burnt end of the stick if I wanted to. So I'd be, if that's all I'm allowed, I'd be happy with that.
Or just draw pictures in the sand. I think if I were on a desert island, there's a genie there and I get to make the wish. I guess I'd wish for the best stuff I could. There's a Caran d'Ache fountain pen that's like $8,000. I want that. Because if I'm going out, I'm like,
Yeah,
like,
but how will you clean it?
well, that's true. But then, but I, you know, it's not like I don't want to hang out with Mr. Wilson all day long. I want to be able to draw and stuff and paint. So I think on a more serious note, yes, definitely a humble number two, whatever that is. Karen Dosh makes a great graph wood pencil, but I'll use anything. Doesn't matter. For paper, I'd like either a Hahnemühle sketchbook or a Stillman and Byrne Alpha series, the heavy, extra heavyweight. I think I'd be happy then. The whatever pen, it's fine. Yeah, that's good. Do you all spray some type of preservative on your pencil drawings? I know I do. I don't. There's some really expensive stuff you can buy. Hey, by the way, if you've never heard of this before, don't be surprised. But back when I was young, I used to spray my drawings with Aquanet
Yeah.
because
No,
basically
oh no,
it worked, right?
that's actually pretty commonly recommended. If you don't have workable fixative, just get aerosol hairspray. Absolutely.
But Aquanet was awesome because you'd spray it, and then my sisters would ask, "Well, what did you do with the hairspray?" This was in the '80s, so I used it on my drawings. But yeah, you can use some really good what is it called, LaCroix or Lac Roux or whatever that really fancy stuff is that you could cost like $40 for a spray paint size can of it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really expensive, and that stuff, to me, it doesn't do any much better than the regular fixative you can buy. But
Right,
yeah,
right.
my opinion. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I just use workable fixative. Just Krylon usually, whatever I buy locally at the art store.
Okay.
So,
the only thing I warn against the cheap hairspray is that it can yellow over time.
yeah.
If it's not in a sketchbook, if it's out in the open, you'll notice a yellowing, and that depends
Right.
too on the paper.
Well, when I was young and couldn't afford to go out and I probably even before I knew there was such a thing as workable fixative, that's what they said. Just use hairspray, and of course they didn't. I wouldn't recommend the pump kind because you'll spatter it all over your drawing. But
Right.
It's got to be aerosol. But no, definitely if you can get workable fixative, do that.
Well, and your paint, your sketchbook stuff's not meant to last 150 years. You're just trying to protect the one page from the other generally when you close it. So, or you're sticking in a drawer with a bunch of stuff. Charcoal is notorious for, I spray it and then I put a wax paper, like the kind you can buy, for cooking. I just put a wax paper over and that seems to work good. Or there's a name for that stuff, something lean. Some whatever, some Purolene or something. Anyway,
I don't know.
Got another question for you, Steve.
Yeah.
What's your favorite? Yeah, go ahead.
No, you were going to read the same one I was going to read. Go ahead.
Oh, what's your favorite black fountain pen to sketch or watercolor?
I like the ink best in this one, the platinum carbon. It's permanent. It dries permanent. It dries faster. I like this pen the best though. This is the Lamy Safari. And the Noodler's ink, the Noodler's bulletproof black ink that I have in it, doesn't dry as fast. So that's the only drawback.
Okay.
You can put, excuse me, you can put carbon ink, platinum carbon ink in here. The platinum carbon ink has to be cleaned out ever so often. You got to be careful with it. It's not, you don't have to worry as much with Noodlers, but either of those are usually what I use. So.
Sounds good. Well, it looks like we come to the end of the question. Oh, wait. All right. Here's Mark's got another question for any pens or pencils you'd not recommend. Yeah, I can take this one, Mark. There are some cheaper pencils. I don't really recommend the Prismacolor line. I can't in good conscience tell people to use that product anymore. Although the white Prismacolor from the Premier line is pretty good, the color white. And the Verithin, if you want really, really tight, sharp lines, I guess I could be persuaded on that side. As far as pens, again, I've gone through a few fountain pens that are very scratchy and don't work very well. I can't remember the brands, but they were sort of knockoff or cheaper ones, Mark. So I couldn't really tell you. And paper has a lot to do with how the pen will behave as well. Good paper's going to make a cheaper pen be more forgiving, I think, in the long run. But there's definitely, Steve's going to be the knowledgeable guy on the pen side, but definitely for pencils, watercolor pencils, there's some lower grade watercolor pencils to avoid if you want to do artist quality or finished work. Prang being one brand, Crayola.
Yeah. I would say on the pen side, just stick with the reputable, well-known artist grade kind of pens, at least with the disposable pens that you usually get at an art place like the Pigma Microns and that sort of thing. There's a lot of craft pens out there, knockoffs. Another thing you have to be careful of, not that craft supplies are necessarily bad, but you got to watch because there are a lot of Me Too kind of suppliers out there, and they're not necessarily in the art supply section. It's really just go to what you know rather than try to figure out if an off-brand or a brand you've never heard of is going to be okay. And usually you can do that. I mean, if you have a reputable art supplier in your area, they're not going to have usually any of that stuff that's sort of off-brand or more designed for kids or students or just people that do some part-time crafting, that kind of thing. One of the things I do, though, really caution against, and as we're getting close to Christmas, you see this kind of crop up more and more, and it's usually in the arts and crafts chain stores like Michael's, AC Moore, Hobby Lobby, stores like that, are the gift sets. Beware of the gift sets, because 90% of the gift sets are garbage. They're trying to sell you a gift, basically, that you would give someone. Some kid in junior high or high school who's interested in art, and their parent goes out and gets them a kit, an art kit. Be careful, because usually the stuff in those kits is just a bunch of trash. Basically, it's usually low grade. I mean, I'm sure there are exceptions, but it's usually low grade art supplies intended just to put together a set. I tell people, if they want to put together a gift set, go to a reputable art store and have somebody help you put together a kit yourself with reputable art supplies that are recognized by artists.
This is a perfect segue, and you must have read my mind, because Wet Paint and I are putting together a holiday set called Marty's Favorite Pencils and Paper and stuff.
There you go.
Put it in a nice box,
and
you'll get great quality stuff. But we're working on that, so I hope Steve's admonitions and warnings won't keep you away from my set. I promise it'll be good quality stuff. But is it true that you're a big Bama fan? That you sleep in a Bama, t-shirt, and that's what I understand, Steve.
I don't sleep in one, but I would if I had the opportunity. Yeah, I'm definitely a Roll Tide guy. I grew up in Birmingham area from the time I was about 6 years old to graduating from college, and you're either, if you live in any part of Alabama, well, if you live in the southern part of Alabama, you're an Auburn fan. But if you live in the Birmingham area, you're either a Bama fan or you're dead. Usually, you don't even know anything about football or what's going on. So, absolutely, man, Roll Tide.
People don't appreciate how passionate American college football fans are, unless they're like they like European soccer. It's kind of, that's the way, and Steve, you can appreciate how long suffering Minnesota fans are. I mean, our team name is the Gophers. How threatening is that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
does anybody scare, you know, are the you got the Georgia Bulldogs, you know, you got lions and tigers and bears, and you got the gopher, the humble, little tiny, you know, lives in a hole gopher.
Right.
It's not really striking fear in the hearts of its opponents.
Well, I'm old enough to remember the Bear Bryant days of Alabama.
Sure.
Those, you know, the early glory days. But, you know, a lot of people say, oh, yeah, well, sure, you know, you're an Alabama fan. You know, how many championships do they have now? 14, 13 or 14? Yeah, but I was there too through the thick and thin. I was there through all those years. They couldn't find a coach, and we couldn't even win an SEC championship. So I've been on both sides of it.
Well, you know, the only thing that will divide people more than politics is college football. It seems like. So,
that's true.
But it's we don't talk about it at work with Wisconsin Badgers fans everywhere. But listen, Steve, it's been a great night. We've covered a lot of topics. I think there's we tried to get to as many questions as we could. But again, you know, as we look forward, Steve and I will probably be talking more about different types of papers, and we're thinking about making this a regular monthly show, like Talking Art with Steve and Marty or something.
Yes, yes. I really think this has been working, Marty, just like you and I have talked, and it's just fun to just sit and talk about the supplies that we use. And, you know, we may not know 100% of everything, you know, that we need to know, but it sure is a whole lot of fun to talk about it. And it's been fun doing this regularly, and I look forward to doing more. So, yeah.
We planned an hour, and there's 2 hours and some minutes.
Oh man, it just doesn't even seem like it's been 2 hours.
I know. And but if you want to participate in the show by giving us topic ideas or things that you'd like to see us covered, please put it in the comment section of this video, or connect with Steve or I via you know, whatever method most suits you, and we'll definitely add those to the list of things we'd like to cover in a live program.
Yep.
Maybe get some audience participation. You know, Steve, I'm always like, I'd love people if they called in. We used to do this on the radio show, but have people call in and then go ahead and put their call on speaker and just listen to what they have.
Who knows? Who knows?
All right.
Well, we'll call it a night. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Val, for your help. And thanks to everybody that hung in there till the end. And until next time, we will see you guys. Everybody have a good evening and a good rest of your week.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye now.